Yeah, thanks, Sangramar. I think I think people are joining in. I'm not sure if people are still joining, but it's good to have to see you guys again. It's probably been what, like 3 weeks away.
It's
But I think I switched the sessions around. I just thought that module 5, um, talking about building the actual application is more important than basically talking about a little bit more advanced features. Yeah, module 6. I'll probably leave module 6 for you as an exercise, I guess. Um, and you'll see from our session today, um, we basically build everything. We covered everything, in the past few weeks. So hopefully you'll notice that some of the code, or most of the code, are actually borrowed from the previous modules, and we basically just put it in um, particular sections in our application. So I'm gonna share my screen quickly.
Yeah, no problem. While you're doing that, Jo, I think I have a couple of questions, or actually just one, based on some, I guess practice that I have done. I always refer to this, diagram of yours.
Thank
It's
you. That's
very, very clear. I mean, it's a good bird's eye view of what it is all about, the RAG system. So what I noticed though is when I use I actually forgot the actual LLM that I use, but is it true that, or is it somewhat like makes sense that your LLM1 and LLM2 should be somehow the same engine? Because the one who's actually ingesting and creating the vector, it makes sense that you use the same, right? I mean,
no, I think someone has already asked kind of
uh,
similar question before. Um, the thing is, right, like the our LLM1, or the retriever model, um, it the input to it is text, and the output is vectors, right? Now the LLM to the generator doesn't really understand vectors at all, right? It only understands text or natural language. So, saying that, that means LLM1 can be any, flavor of embedding model, right? So it can be any embedding model hosted on the cloud, or sometimes what we do is, in our exercise, is our embedding model we basically just downloaded from Hugging Face, right? And once we download it in Hugging Face, we basically host it in our local environment. And that means our text embedding model, it's a very small model. It's basically like a function is running locally, while our um, generator model, or the main LLM, typically, if we have access to the internet, then we would like to use a hosted language model. However, it's also possible, we've seen, to host a language model in our local machine using either Olama or LM Studio, as what we've used before. Did I answer your question, Ingramar?
yep, Jo, yep. It's just that I just remembered now Chroma DB.
Yeah.
Essentially, use Chroma DB. Somehow, I use it in for both LLM1 and LLM2. Somehow, it's somewhat like interconnected, and that's
Uh-huh.
why I asked them. But it doesn't harm really, even if you use the same flavor in those two areas, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's say if Chroma DB supports both. It makes sense to just use one,
Yeah,
right?
maybe we can have a look at your Chroma DB installation, because I'm not 100% sure exactly what the features of Chroma DB. It
I see.
might have a built-in embedding model. I'm not sure.
Mm.
That's why when you used it, you probably didn't realize that you didn't set up an embedding model. Uh,
Okay.
separately. So in our case, we actually had to set up our own embedding model. to basically grab the text from our PDF document and convert that into vector, which we basically store inside our Postgres database.
Yep. And
Yeah.
by the way, Jo, Tony commented saying, so LLM1 is just the embedding module, but LLM2 is the transformer.
That's correct. Yeah. So LLM1 is our retriever, basically just convert the text to vectors so that we can save it in our vector store. And then the LLM2 is basically our generator, or the main LLM, right? The Chat GPT, sorry, the GPT-5, sorry, GPT 3.5, GPT-4. It can be Claude in Anthropic, or it can be any of the models in Grok.
Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for that reminder, Engramar. If you want, I want you to leave this series. Just remember this page. As I mentioned before, it's quite handy, and will give you a mental model of where things are. Right. If you understand this, then you'll understand the more complex things. So I started with this page because our application that we are looking at now, Chainlit, is basically doing exactly what we're seeing here, right? So we're basically using Chainlit as a full stack web application, right? I'm a full stack developer. I work on the front end and I also work on the back end, but it's a hard job to basically work on an application by yourself, right? So a good thing about these tools, like for example, Chainlit or Streamlit, it allows you to build a full stack web application using just Python, right? And that's quite useful because it enables you to build. Imagine building this system by yourself, right? And what's even good about this one is we can like build the system completely locally, right? So if you don't have to worry about the cloud bills, you don't have to worry about the internet. Just set it up in your local machine, and then you can build it and debug it to your heart's content without worry about anything. So I think that's a good thing. And you with Chainlit or Streamlit, obviously on the web, right? So you have to typically, if you're building something on the web, you need like React or a JavaScript framework to build a really nice front end. But it's got its place, like to have really custom, but something like a basic chat interface, it's totally covered by this application. So yeah, let's just go through it if that's okay. As I mentioned, going to be using Chainlit. Have a look at this website. Their documentation is pretty extensive, right? So you can have a look at how to do installation, which is pretty straightforward. If you look at that, it's just basically a pip install, right? And now doing a pip install, you now have access to build an application, a chat application, which we can remain on your local machine, or you can install deploy in the cloud if you want to. I'll just go through quickly. So as mentioned here, Chainlit is an open source Python package, so it's available for everyone. And there's no cost there. If you have a chance, have a look, have a listen to this video. Give you some details. Main features about Chainlit, I mentioned that it is really fast. I built this application probably in half an hour. Basically just pip install and basically just copied our previous modules functions, right? Which I'll show you in a bit. Multi-platform, so you could actually, what did they say? Multi-platform means, in this example today, we'll be deploying it in a web app, right? Chainlit by default has a native UI, which is a web application. We'll show in a bit, but we could actually integrate with different applications if we want to. But for today, it's gonna be just the web app, the default one. Okay, okay, that's cool. That's not important to go through all that, but the main thing is it's got a lot of integrations with different LLMs as well. Did mention, it doesn't mention anything about I'm not sure why they didn't mention AWS, but I'm sure we should be able to talk to AWS as well. Any questions so far?
Oh, good. Good.
Good. Okay. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, let's have a look at some code if you don't have any questions. Anyone front end developer here or back end developer in the call? Yeah, David's in the call, so you can do front end and back end, right?
Yep. Yep, I can help out.
Okay. I've got VS Code running, right? Just quickly, we've got our README in module 5. I'm not sure if that's too. Are you seeing my screen or you're not?
Yep, we can see it.
Are you're not seeing my Visual Studio? Sorry, I need to reshare my screen. Sorry about that. I actually need to share my entire screen, not just the window. Okay, so is the size all right? Okay, maybe that's too big. Maybe that's good. Okay, so we are looking at README for module 5. And it's basically what I written down there about RAG application using Chainlit, right? So when we run it, we basically just see that interface, and it's a pretty interface that you can customize to an extent. But for our use case, for example, if we want to build a local web application running locally, as you'll see in a bit, it's it's pretty good, right? It looks like a professional, right, application. So how do you use this, right? So first of all, as we saw in the previous page, we need to do just a pip install. So that's Chainlit installed in your system. Next thing is basically to go through the subdirectory module 5. That's where our code is in 01 Chainlit front end. The notebook here is basically just to download the document, right? So for this particular example, I just downloaded an archive document. Attention is all you need. So that's basically the where I guess the roots of generative AI and transformer architecture. So yeah, if you want to know about attention is all you need paper, then yeah, download that and let's ask questions about it. Now the main Chainlit application is in this Python file. And okay, so there's some Chainlit has got a couple of decorators, right? The main decorator, important decorator is basically chat start, and the message decorator. So all you need to do is fill that up. For this particular instance, a very simple one. I just said when it starts, I want to display this particular string, right? So I said I've ingested attention is all you need. How may I help you? And how does it look like on the screen? So I have our app here running. When you run the application, so to run that, you just say chainlit chainlit run, and then the file name, right? So W is basically a watch. So just like when you're developing a typical web application, right? As you change your code, right, and click on save, Chainlit is actually watching for the changes, and when there's any changes, it actually updates the front end for you. So you don't need to refresh your screen when you do changes. So it's pretty good. So yeah, that's basically Chainlit running on port 8000. Right. So yeah, so you know we've got our RAG application here, right? So let's have a look at what was required to basically reach that stage. We've got a Chainlit app. All we did was to fill up our chat start decorator, right? When it starts, we basically set the session using the query engine. And you know, query engine, we'll go through that. So basically, just have that as a you know, global variable. And yeah, that's all you really need to set it up at the start. And for each message that it receives, right? So we have another decorator called on message. And when Chainlit I guess receives messages from the UI, you basically go through this one. I'm not sure if you remember when we did our RAG instruction before, we were talking about a retriever and we were talking about a query engine in Llama Index, right? So this query engine is basically the RAG system in Llama Index, right? So if you remember our lessons before, when we load the application, right, inside this try block, you will see familiar code, you know, that we've written before in previous modules. When it starts up, you know, before even going through the chat start decorator, we're setting up a few things. We're setting up our RAG architecture, right? First thing is we set up our vector database. Vector database, in this instance, we are using the local Postgres database running on localhost port 5432. For Ngramar, you didn't have, well, you tried, but was unsuccessful. So you used another ChromaDB instead. So that's totally fine. You can run ChromaDB from file system, and which means you can run it locally as well. Yeah, so yeah, this is basically setting up our vector DB, and you know, I'm sure you've seen this code before, but yeah, it's not that much important. Just know that this function is basically setting up the vector database, local machine, or it can be in the cloud, doesn't matter, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing on line 110 is basically setting up our embedding model, right? So if you recall our image, the LLM1, sorry, LLM, was it LLM1 or LLM2? LLM1, the embedding model, actually, yeah. I'll just get rid of this. Okay, so we're setting up our embedding model, LLM1, and what are we using? You know, we've seen this code before, right? Like we downloading Hugging Face embedding to our local machine. I guess you know this would need internet connection because you need to download that model locally. But once it downloaded locally, Hugging Face actually caches that one, and then if you need it again, it wouldn't load that again from the internet. But basically, we're using this. It's quite popular embedding model, English. Um, yeah. Now, for this one, remember when we're using an embedding model, we actually need to know the size of the embedding, the dimensions of that embedding used by the embedding model. So that's why we're getting the vector size here. It's going to be important later on because when we save data to our database, vector database, we need to know the size of each embedding, right? Okay, that's the second step, setting up the embedding model. This one is setting up global settings. It's just configuration that we need to do. Actually, now we're setting up the actual LLM that we're using, LLM2, right? So in this one, we're using LM Studio. I've downloaded Llama 3.1 locally, right? So I've got it running on the side somewhere, that one. And finally, we have our simple RAG setup, right? And ingest documents. So these are the same code that we had before in our notebook. I basically just copied them over here. After setting up the global settings, then we're ready to set up our RAG system. So what we do basically is to ingest the documents in the vector store, right? And then once that's ingested, I've got my vector DB running here. You'll see that it created 16 nodes, and if it ingested the document attention all you need, and then all the vector embeddings are in this column here. So I like using the local PG vector because I can actually see things as I'm ingesting them. Okay, so that's the RAG after ingesting the documents, and that's the actual ingestion using the simple directory reader in Llama Index. Okay, so once that's done, we've got our index. You know that once you have got an index, you basically can create a query engine. When we say query engine in Llama Index, just to remind you, it's actually the RAG, RAG system already. So what happens with a query engine in Llama Index? Once you have a query engine, you just pass the string that you want to ask your LLM, right? And once you have a query engine, now in the on chat start, Chainlit will basically grab that. Once it's set up, once your RAG system set up, Chainlit just grabs that, adds it to the session, and basically just uses that in your front in your user interface. If you look at here, the message on message decorator is also using the query engine here. So what does that look like? What questions do you want to ask? Whereas I have written down some questions here so that I don't have to type. So for example, what's your document about? So it's very good, right? It's actually using streaming, right? So similar to our user interface experience with things like Anthropic or ChatGPT, is very, very similar, right? So for example, we can ask it to give us some questions to ask, right? So this application, Angrama, right? Like we were talking about it like a couple of months ago. We were talking about like we wonder how we can build like a local LLM application, right? So what we see here is actually already a local LLM application. It's a system that you can build upon, right? So if you've got projects, or if you've got maybe family who wants to play with it, you can build it, or maybe friends, or whoever needs something like that. But it's quite basic, but it's got all the things there required
I
to
think,
with
I
a
think,
proper rack application.
sorry, Jo, sorry, I just want to ask, I think I noticed that Chainlit seems to be more of like just uh, 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 introducing a platform to essentially chain together all of those conversations, right? Because if you come to think of it, the rag that we built before this chapter, it's already conversational, right? You can ask questions as well using the prompt, but this one is somewhat like just giving you the GUI. Is that correct? Because
Yes.
you primarily use the two LLMs,
Yeah.
which we used before, and this is somewhat like just gluing them together in an interface. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
I think that's correct, but I think it's also got like functionality of keeping the history as a context, right? So, for example, you ask it, "What
I see.
is it about?" Right? So we're asking, "What is it about?" Um, it kind of understands. I'm not sure. Maybe not. I thought it has the context of the conversations, but I really basically just played with it for about 30 minutes to build this demo. And my intention is basically to just look a little bit deeper on what it is. But we can actually see that with very very little work, we were able to build this thing, right? And hopefully it can be useful to you too.
That's really true. Actually, this is more of like what's next for us. All of those members here and the ones who are not here, who attended the study group. What we're offering actually from Code.Sydney side. If you don't mind, Jo, I'll quickly just share my screen.
Yes, please go ahead. I'm actually finished. That's all we're going to be talking about today.
Thank you. Guys, I just want to, show something in relation to the next steps, right? I hope you'll be able to join me as well in exploring, I guess, all of these things that we learned from Jo, from our mentor. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
The Code Sydney website, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is, it was just recently published and it was created by our friend Brody. So anyway, we have three offerings as you can see here. The Blue Hex is the commercial side. It's sort of like a commercial engagement. We just recently released it. Tech is for good as for non-profits and apps for good. This is where I want to actually showcase what we want to do as next steps. There are two things here which we can play around if you would want to. It's not mandatory. But if you want to practice, for example, if you can see, like in my case, I might start with what I know, the JP, the Justice of the Peace. I might use Chainlit to do that quickly. And I'll just publish it here. Regardless whether someone will use it or not, I'll just put it here as like an apps for good, right? If ever wants to get it and use it, that's fine. If not, that's fine as well. If you don't want it to be published, because this one is somewhat like you will get some income out of it if you want to. And we have some, I guess, commissions here. But I'm still trying to negotiate this one for IMS. But if you don't want to get into that, there's also like the portfolios side wherein if you want to build your portfolio for your Gen AI journey, we can also add portfolios here. So yeah, either apps for good or portfolios for good. If you would want to practice, then we can do it that way. Yeah, I'm planning to do something eventually after this. Yeah, and
That's
thanks
good.
for
That's good. Good on you. Let's chat offline, Garmar. Think about ideas and how to put up something that's worth it to share, and then worth people to download and play with as well.
correct, correct, yeah, correct. Yeah, I was thinking, for example, those non-profits, some of them, there's like a referral form from the government in the state of New South Wales, those type of things. There are some, I guess, things that we can somehow tap, but we'll see how we go. Yep. But yeah, I really wish that you will play with what you've learned so far from our master, Jo.
Master. No, no,
Yep.
as I mentioned before, like just maybe a few weeks ahead of everyone. So I'm still learning, and I love learning and sharing things that I've learned as well. So hopefully this is not the last presentation or some tutorial or study group for me. So I hope to continue once work's a little bit less busy, and yeah, probably another time.
No problem. Thanks again. Thank you very much, Jo.
Yeah,
I
thanks so
hope.
much for everyone coming to yeah.
Oh, looks like Tony wants to take.
Hey Tony, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Very good presentation. I really enjoyed the journey. Just wondering, do you have any plan for like agent part of the large language model, because that is quite popular and it's quite promising in terms of the its, application.
Yeah, I think obviously it's everything's new. I do have plans to kind of study about agents. I don't have much information about agents apart from the very small tutorial I've done before. But yeah, if that's something interesting for you, let's maybe do something about that, right? So yeah, if Code.Sydney will have me, I'll gladly go through another session.
Actually, just for your confirmation, we invited you already. I'm hoping as well, Tony, David, Kata, hopefully will progress as well with Code.Sydney. You're always welcome to join the community.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a commercial and community. It's always like a for-purpose company, essentially.
Yeah, it's been a great journey for me. Yeah. I learned a lot from you guys, which is quite interesting. Appreciate that. Yeah, just looking forward for the next step.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for this kind words. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thanks,
Catherine.
Gareth.
Bye-bye.
And Gramar, let's catch up later. See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we'll do it
Thanks.
soon. See
Cheers.
you guys.
Bye.
Bye.